You're now tuned into the Real Rap Radio Show. I'm your host, Walil Archer on Downtown Hot Radio. I have a special guest. I have the author, William Demps. How are you today?
I am doing excellent, and I wish everyone for the betterment involved. And we're coming into spring, we're coming out of winter, and positivity for everybody.
So glad to have you back on the radio show.
Thank you.
Yeah, so much information to share from the last time. That's why I'm glad you came back so we can continue our conversation from the
Yeah,
last one we had.
yeah.
So let's jump right into it. So, how did you decide to become an author?
Well, I'm always writing something, and this is a funny story. Me and my bakery manager from the grocery store that I work at, we always have like this not a confrontation, but it's always a conversation about me always writing something, right? And I've always been writing something with a pen. Ever since I was a little boy, I've always just been writing something. And my dead mother was a seamstress. She was an embroidery artist. She was the type of woman, and it's really kind of goofy, talking about this. She would always sew stuff. She would always, be sewing, stitching, embroidery, the stuff that you would get out of the art store Michaels, if you're aware of that. And she grew up from back then, from the 50s to 60s, and obviously when she died, she's not doing that now. But even to this day, I still have her artwork where she was stitching, something within, fine, cloth to make artwork. And she always raised me to always write on what you're talking about. And she actually wrote in cursive. And she wrote so many letters when, she was alive, including, when 9/11 happened. And I still have those physical letters of, things that happened in the past. For example, when she was living in Hawaii with my blood father at the time when they were married, there was lots of conversations that she wrote about that many military personnel during the 70s and 80s were on food stamps. So writing for me was always a way of not only logging down information, just figuring out what's going on with reality just from a, first person perspective, but as well as how do you communicate information where things are going to go. If you're working out of a bakery and you're working out of a kitchen, you have to write down what you're doing. You have to write down so people can see what you're doing and where things are going to go, right? This is a pipeline production. This could be the same thing in the military. This can be the same thing in video game design. This can be the same thing in any facet of life. You have to write down what you're doing so people can read what you're doing. And unfortunately, it's very sometimes hard for people to read how you write. So we have to figure out how to properly write so people can read what you're doing. In a kitchen environment, that can be really crazy because you're just chicken scratch writing, getting stuff done, and moving your ass. That's just what it is. And writing for me has always been this avenue of figuring out life. We figure out drawing, we figure out even the Mortal Kombat sign, that's behind me. Kind of different thing. Um, we have a way of articulating information through drawing, rendering. And when we think about writing for me as an author, this is the way that I communicate with reality. This is the way I communicate with people, regardless of race, regardless of religion, regardless of creed, regardless of gender or sex. And what's even funnier, I am a tarot reader, and this is my main tarot deck that I work with. It's an elemental deck, and as interesting as it sounds, this particular tarot deck was illustrated by the late, he's not dead yet, by Yoshitaka Amano of Final Fantasy. This is a legitimate tarot deck. This has legitimate cards. I mean, you can clearly see, this is like the Queen of Pentacles. I have a Final Fantasy tarot deck. This is the way sometimes I communicate with spirit when I'm trying to get to the root of a problem. And how do you draw something to illustrate information so people can understand what you're talking about? And as goofy as this sounds, even as a published author, I may be sending something out to, through the universe to a publisher or something, and I may never actually talk to the person who's reading the book. Isn't that scary?
That is so true. I never thought of it that way. That is true.
It's true, and I'm talking with a bunch of people who are becoming my fans. Some people where I work at my day job, they found out I'm a published author. And then, some people with my psychic clients, like, oh, wait, William does writing and artwork. It's like, yeah, I have an art squad. I talk with my art people. And it's different days, different things, figuring out what's going on with the universe. And, one of the most humbling things I could say, in this interview with, my three books we're getting ready to talk about, I went to the Distant Worlds concert in Los Angeles, California this past January. literally, I was literally like in like what was it, the first six rows. I saw Amanda Aiken, I saw Mr. Soken of Final Fantasy 14 and Final Fantasy 16. Arnie Roth was there. Actually, if you see the red box up here, God, this is kind of crazy. Right there where my finger's pointing, that is actually the Distant Worlds 7 CD. It was not sold to the public, and you cannot buy that from an online vendor, as meaning if you went to the Distant Worlds website, you can't buy this CD. They were only selling it to the concert people who showed up at the concert, as goofy as that sounds at the Peacock Theater. So that's kind of a crazy conversation. It's like, how do you participate with people when you're not personally or professionally selling something? That's kind of insane. That's where we're at with reality.
Now let's talk about your first book. Let the listeners know the name of the first book.
So it's called Imagination Volume 1. It's a very beautiful book. I wrote this when I was in college, just figuring out life and reality. What's on the internet? What are you doing with your food? What are you doing with computer software? What's going on with life? And, how people are relating and doing things. And I wrote this obviously when I was in college, coming, when I was out of the Navy, dealing with hardcore PTSD stuff. I was blamed for killing children. I have, been medically documented with, post-traumatic stress disorder from Veterans Affairs. And, where are we at with life, with how do we not only process information, but how do we project it out in a healthy way, right? We think about cartoons and stuff, and this is also very interesting working out of a bakery. Whenever you're writing on a cake, it could be a cookie cake, it could be a normal cake, chocolate, red velvet, vanilla, whatever, buttercream icing, whatever. You have to put intention of what you're doing and to relay information, including if that's just happy birthday. So when I was writing Imagination Volume 1, I wanted to see what was going on with reality, what was going on. And I was trained under Disney Imagineers. These people knew how to imagine something in their head, talk to people in the mechanical fields, the engineering fields. How do we make a Ferris wheel with existing parts that are on the market, including from the hydraulic hose industry? And I was, in fact, a hydraulic hose fabricator, meaning I know how to take existing parts, make something happen, and then it goes into a construction, vehicle, be that a crane, any type of construction vehicle. I was basically making construction vanes for a living for a year. And with Imagination Volume 1, I was talking about where we are as a species, right? Where are we at, figuring out how do we eat? What's going on with the internet? What's going on, at the time with TV, streaming was not so hot except in the gaming industry, and they were still figuring out how that worked. And I wrote some very troubling things, especially, with one of the well, actually it was the last page of Imagination Volume 1 when it had to come with women. And this woman at the very end of Imagination Volume 1 was someone that I was going to marry. She actually chose a dark path of PTSD. I served with her in the military. There's a lot of troubling conversations as to what we do with women in every facet of life, be that in pregnancy. And this happens in the military, right? You could be getting ready to go on a 6 to 8 month deployment in the Navy. I've actually seen this. And you could just arrive at your command and people that you just shook hands to meet. Hey, I'm like the new guy, third day here in the command. And the person that you're talking to, he's actually getting ready to go on an 8-month deployment. You will probably not see him for the half of your military career. And the things that happen before military, deployment starts, including if there's women on the ship and they magically get pregnant. That's a nasty conversation. Women don't know their ovulation cycles, and I don't know how I got pregnant before 2 weeks before deployment started, and then they get medically discharged.
Gotcha.
Yeah, reality, right? And when we think about women to reality, how do we, have sex with women in a healthy way? How do we participate with women in a healthy way? Pretty much no one seems to know what to do with this conversation in the legal sense as well. We have the paternity court system, paternity fraud stuff. I've seen that like pretty much predominantly in the white and black demographic. You really don't see that in the Asian communities. And that's really sad. It's really sad that people are kind of just playing a jerk game with how they don't want to have sex with people in a coherent way. And unfortunately, when we think of marital systems, and especially, with writing Imagination Volume 1, you have to commit to things. Sometimes you can make a commitment to a book, and we don't know not only where this is going to lead, but you got to ride this journey out like you're going on a 9-hour road trip, right? Most people can't handle being in the same car with somebody for 30 minutes. Reality, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Reality, right? It's like,
yeah, yeah. So
that's
true.
terrible. It's the truth. And, coming, and this is a very painful thing to say, and we'll go into this with my second book called Kindle Perusia. This is a graphic novel. It's about 123 pages. All the artwork is original. Everything has been completed. We are just working on teaser pages. We're just working on the cover artwork and stuff. It's officially done. We do have a film counterpart being produced through Buffalo 8. We do have actors and actresses. I
Nice.
know one, actually, I know both of the actors, and actually, I know three of the actors and actresses on a first and last name basis. And I actually killed one of them in the video game Elden Ring. So that's going to be, you killed one of your actresses in the video game. Blame was like, I absolutely did in a very brutal way. And she totally pissed me off, right? Commitments, right? And, it's how do we talk to people in a loving way? And it's like, I would like for you to play this character, even though I killed you in this video game. It's like, oh, I would love to be with you in this video game. You sound like a really stellar guy. And it's like, well, here we are with reality, right? And I wrote this graphic novel when I was in the psych ward with Veterans Affairs. My PTSD, I'm going to be 37 this year. My 20s, from when I got out of the Navy up until I was like damn near 30, I was littered and riddled and going through psych wards with Veterans Affairs because I had to figure out how to control my post-traumatic stress disorder. People would just say stupid things, including from religious communities. And just to cut a long story short, when I was in Haiti for the relief effort, I saw actual churches get destroyed. When an earthquake happens, it will flatline everything within the vicinity like a nuclear weapon. Bibles got destroyed. Women were giving birth to dead babies. People were just seeing reality as if you couldn't give a middle finger to it, right? We think about identity politics, how, the transgender community or people are going to say Z's are them or I'm non-binary. It's like, say that to an earthquake while it happens, or say that to a hurricane that's doing this number around you, right? That is totally insane. That's not how we communicate to reality. If you have an emergency, you have to scream you have an emergency. We have a generation of people that don't know how to talk legitimately, for real, retail logic aside. And when I wrote Kindle Perusia, I talked about some heavy things that I was seeing, with my clients with different marital things. I'm going to be very brutal with this. This is very specific to Kindle, and people already know about this. You read the story. We have a very serious homosexual relationship with men, with other men, because the women are behaving so badly, be that with their weight problems, be that with their personalities, be that how they're addicted to money or however they're getting money as digital prostitutes, like on OnlyFans or that other Cash App crap. Men are ejecting out of society because the women are behaving this badly, including in construction fields and in the military industry, be that you're active duty or you're commissioned or you're inactive. And I heard the horror stories. I've seen the horror stories, including if you are on a military ship on a deployment and you see a bunch of guys running around, they start snitching on each other, including however they got caught. The married men have to tell their wives, call their wives, however they were able to get a phone line on a different country on a U.S. naval ship in a different country, that they were having sex with a prostitute, be that a male or somebody on the ship, to wreck their marriage. That's how nasty things are right now in the marital field. People are behaving that badly. And now we have the transgender stuff, and people are not, one, they're not having healthy sexual relationships. And when they are having sex, they're killing themselves, right? We have 40 forms of birth control in the market, and we have like 40, 50 different ways for people to simply contact each other. You have to pay for services on Hinge, Tinder, even with matchmakers. You could be spending thousands of dollars with a matchmaker just to simply talk to them. And whatever is going on with the women, whatever this is that's getting squeezed out by the federal government, we're seeing this thing with Trump squeezing EBT and other stuff. We're seeing women not behaving in a healthy sexual relationship with men in any capacity. Doesn't matter if they're white, doesn't matter if they're black. Race, it really isn't a big deal, but you really don't see this in the Asian or the Middle Eastern communities. And that's really sad. That's really sad in the year 2025, right? That two men have to take it up the butt because their wives don't want to put out. That's kind of scary. I wrote that in Kindle Perusia, and I I went nitro with it, including, what happens, in a combat situation in Haiti. And I wrote my darkest story. I didn't give a rip where it went. And we talked about commitments. That story got read by Ridley Scott Association. Sir Ridley Scott read that story. So that was kind of really crazy. That dude who made Aliens read that. And I'm committing to this graphic novel with going as nasty as I can get away with. I've actually written all 7 volumes to this story. And I went completely, and I will commit to being as nasty as I can get away with the things I'm hearing on the market, with what I'm hearing, be that at a shopping mall, my psychic calls, just whatever I'm seeing on the news outlets. I'm committing just to being the nastiest person with this graphic novel series. And on the flip side, when it came with my 3rd book, which is called Emerald Decade, I wrote this also on my last deployment, and it is the goofiest story I've ever written. There is a catfish on a bubble. It is an ultramarine catfish on a bubble. He has this goofy voice. I am talking with a particular voice actor. He knows who he is if he's looking at this video. And sometimes if I'm talking in a really goofy way and I'm just trying to make my point come across, I'm just trying to, point something out and be a complete stupid doofus dumbass. Sometimes you might have to talk to a voice actor and just relay comical information with a catfish on a bubble. And I love this story so much. My 3rd book, this story got read by Hayao Miyazaki of Studio Ghibli. I don't even know what to do with myself as a published author compared to people working at BioWare or, well, as of this past Distant World concert, Nobuo Uematsu, Arnie Roth, the people at Square Enix, they are in possession of all 3 books. As meaning they have the digital PDFs, including the singers and the other people involved. And wow, what a thing to do with your life, right? You can achieve your dreams. You can, contrary to popular belief, right? One thing that sucks about being mixed is, one, you can see, what's going on between people. And this is very relevant to all of my stories. The majority of my protagonists are actually multiracial, is meaning some of these characters might have green hair, they might have brown hair, they may have really goofy Negro hair. And the reason why they have that is because they carry that ancestry. We're walking around as multiracials. We think about Black Lives Matter and stuff. One, there's more mixed people than there are black people, legitimately. And then 2, most people can't cook as well. When we think about chitlins, which are the intestinal lines of cows and pigs, and we think about cleaning that so that you can properly eat it, and that most people, if you work in the culinary arts like I do and you eat bratwurst, the reason why they call that protein casing is because it's the actual shit lining that they put meat into that was cleaned and that they roast or cook it. And the Europeans actually did that first. So we think about reality and how we communicate and, manage the kind of the goofiness of life. I write things. I find things out about life. I log things down. I always write everything, including, as best as I can to write resources. And I just want people to understand, with all of my stories and, even with this video involved, we live in a very crazy place. Whether you're making bread from scratch, who's the first person to make bread? Like, who wrote the Bible, the Christian Bible, for real? Who actually wrote that? Right? Who was the first person to say, hey, let's have some yeast and just throw this in just whatever, right? And people eat out of it. And as of, including last night working on my bakery, what doesn't get sold gets donated to the local churches or to the homeless or to the charity. So every day that I have my day job and I go to work, I'm feeding the homeless, right? I don't know where this food is going, but somebody is putting this in a cardboard box. And whoever, and again, we think about the homeless, and it's a very tragic thing to say, but it's so true. People don't have good dental hygiene for whatever reason. And that actually kind of matters, because in life, you might lose your tooth. You might have a box fall on you. You might be in the military. Something happens. Something knocks your tooth out. That's where we're at with reality. You get cancer, you get chemo, knocks your tooth out. This is where we're at with reality. How do we properly eat? I know somebody, when I used to work at a Walmart for 5 years, and we think about reality and just making choices and things. People not only have different blood, but toothpaste reacts differently to your teeth. And I know somebody from Walmart who lost all of his teeth. That's sad.
Yes.
But this is where we're at with reality. We need to, join hands and help and feed each other. And whatever that, my stories go, especially with Imagination Volume 1, I want people to really read this book and just feel themselves in their skin. Feel themselves, where they're at with the air, when it's raining, when it's snowing, and understand that that person that's walking by you when you're reading that book probably has never seen you before. As brutal as this sounds, the other day, it was snowing here in Virginia. Virginia's a crazy state because now we're in the 70s, and like 2 weeks ago it was like snowing like 3 inches. And I was walking to my car, right? It was like 6:30 in the morning. I got my heavy fighter coat on. It is cold. I'm like, dude, I do not want to be up here at 6:30. I'm not coming out, and it's dark. I have that joke. It's dark to dark, meaning as when I go into work, it's 6:30 dark. When I got out of the store, it is like pitch black dark. I didn't even see the sun throughout the day. And I'm going to my car. I'm turning it on, and frost is everywhere. You got to defrost your car for 7 to 10 minutes. That's what it is. And unfortunately, when we think about the younger generation, any young person, I hate talking like I'm old, who's below the age of 25 to 10, stop going outside with the wet hair at 17 degrees Fahrenheit with a light jacket, thinking it's cool that you can withstand the cold. I'm serious. It's like I literally went to defrost my car and I saw a couple of girls 17 degrees Fahrenheit. And they had wet hair and they're walking down, I'm like, with a light jacket at 17 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm like, y'all are fucking crazy. Like, you straight up, I work out of a freezer. Like, y'all are totally nuts. And then the night before when I was closing, I do see the homeless. And some homeless people don't make it through the night.
Wow.
That's the truth. Because it got cold. Including if you go to a grocery store and somebody asks, I haven't eaten in 3 days, can you give me $5? And you don't see that person again ever. You don't know where they went, if they're even alive. And it's cold.
Yep. So let me ask you this. What do you think the viewer is going to take away from reading book number 1?
So my biggest thing for people to take from book number 1, this will be my longest running series. I will write as many volumes as I possibly can. And I'm not writing, trying to make the next Bible or something, but I'm trying to relay information as to what's going on with reality, right? What happens when you go to Disneyland? And for people just to read this book, read and see, read and feel. And my biggest thing to take away is that you can have a nasty experience with life. That's not a reason to quit the experience of life. We have a lot of people, and I'm not going to try to, use vulgar language. I do deal with a lot of sexual assault victims, be that even when I was working at a Walmart, and people just openly say that over the camera. Just because, and I'm going to say it just in this particular way, just because somebody turns your butthole out the wrong way, be that a family member or whoever, that's not to say that you can't enjoy having a positive sexual experience. Just because you go to a 5-star restaurant and you had a crappy experience, that doesn't deter you, or it shouldn't deter you from going to Ruby Tuesday or Chili's. We have a lot of things going on right now where people are having one-time experiences with things and it completely ruins their life. And that's not how life works. And when we always, especially with Imagination Volume 1, people will pick out different things from multiple rereads through the book. So I always encourage people to read Imagination Volume 1 multiple times. Just read it. Don't make judgments about what you feel or think about yourself. Just see how people are behaving and enjoy yourself. We have so many ways of enjoying life. If you don't have to drink and drive, don't do it, for real. And a lot of people are having a hard time with that. And as a combat veteran of the U.S. Navy, as someone who went into combat illegally all the way up to the White House multiple times, we have a serious issue with how people are trying to proclaim what masculinity is and what femininity is. And unfortunately, being a man isn't about raising your voice and beating up on people, including with hazing in any particular way. And women do it too. That mean girls nonsense. It's totally inappropriate in every stretch of the phrase. And if you go into the pool, there's always going to be pee in the pool. But that's not to say that you can't take a shower, and if you're somebody that you like, at least say, hey, I would like to have a dinner with you and see if I can have a nice conversation with you. People are not talking to each other. They're just not doing it.
And as we begin to close out, where can they find your three books at?
So, Kindle Perusia will be released more than likely before May. Emerald Decade will be completed by the end of February. I will have a physical copy in my hand, and you can pick up Imagination Volume 1 on Amazon.com, and you can also reach out to Dorrance Publishing. However you feel that whatever methods that you want to reach out to it. However, on Amazon.com, if it says it's out of stock, just order it. It's just the way Amazon.com has their order set up. When Dorrance Publishing makes a book, they make a book like making a pizza. So if you order the pizza, you order the book, right? You go on to Amazon.com, you want a hard copy, just order it. Dorrance Publishing will make that copy like they're making a pizza. They don't just mass produce books and send it out, right? It's just whoever wants it, they get their book. And if you want to order from DorrancePublishing.com, feel free to do it from there. And as well, I can also send you some email or some contact information if people want to reach through you to get to the books themselves through that particular avenue. You can talk to Atticus Publishing. We can share contact information. I have no issue with doing that. And I'm so thankful for talking to you. I really enjoy talking with you. You know, it's like one of my favorite things about being Black and being mixed and stuff. I get to experience people's energy. I get to experience my ancestry, right? I love being mixed, right? That's just what it is. I went to Africa twice. I got to see where our family roots were from. Wasn't very positive, but I got to see where our people walked, right? I'm proud to be Black. I'm proud to be Korean. I'm proud to be French and Cherokee. And you know, as a multiracial moving up in Hollywood and stuff, you know, we need people to shake hands and say hello and figure out how to deal with each other's hair because hair products are totally insane, especially when you're mixed. It's just what it is. And to any woman that's Black who knows, you know, children who are multiracial or biracial and their mother is Asian or white, you need to talk to these women and show them how to deal with Negro hair.
Well, William, that's my time today. So I'd like to thank you for doing the interview.
Yeah, thank you so much for everything. I love your energy. I love doing these interviews. You know, whatever you want to do, I will be on your page every step of the way. I just, for the betterment involved, I love your radio show and, you know, just God bless and Godspeed.
Thank you so much. So that's my time today on the Real Rap Radio Show. And I'll see you guys next time on the Real Rap Radio Show with Walil Archer on Down to Hot Radio. Peace and blessings, everyone.
Bye.